Hi, welcome to the video. As the end of the year approaches, I wanted to record my impressions of some books that I read during the year. These books, I'm glad I read them, but they didn't have such an effect on me that I wanted to make an entire video about them. This is going to be several book reviews of some books that I read in 2024. Now, at the beginning of the year, there was an exhibition at the Getty Museum of the sculptor Camille Claudel. And so before I went to see that, I read a biography of Camille Claudel. She's the French sculptor, she's associated with Rodin, and so I wanted to get an idea who she was. I went to the exhibit. I appreciate her talent and what she was doing and her own discoveries. One thing I was kind of looking at in the biography of Camille Claudel was I've heard some criticisms of Rodin. I wanted to know if his relationship with her had a bad effect on her career. And as I read the book, I was trying to be fair. Of course, I like Rodin. The way I see it, Rodin was a very controversial sculptor in France, in Paris, and he had a relationship with a woman named Rose that was a very strong relationship from when he was a very poor sculptor, not making any money and nobody cared. And then he started to get more successful and controversial. And then Camille Claudel came into his studio to learn how to be a sculptor and assist him in his sculptures. And, they formed an intimate relationship. Kind of the narrative that I had heard is that he was cruel to her and he sabotaged her. But in a way, she benefited a lot from working with Rodin. I'm sure it helped her stature as a sculptor to be associated with Rodin. And so she was a hypergamist, Here's Rodin. He's an up and coming sculptor. She wants to be a sculptor. She goes with the guy who's the winner, you know? And so then they had their relationship. Rodin was always loyal to Rose. Eventually, I feel like Camille Claudel tried to break up his relationship with Rose, and she failed. And then she was kind of expelled from the inner circle of Rodin, but he did stay loyal to Rose. He stayed loyal to Rose, which contradicts the theory that he was some kind of a mean misogynist to Camille Claudel. Some of her sculpture, you can see the definite influence from Rodin, but then she also found her own voice as a sculptor. I'm glad she found her own voice, but it doesn't really speak to me. The biography was good. I'm glad I read it. Okay, the next book that I read was associated with my trip to Boston, and I went to the Isabella Gardner Museum, and I read Chasing Beauty by Natalie Dykstra. This is a biography of Isabella Gardner. It's a standard biography that it's very authoritative. I'm sure it was done with all the approvals of the organization associated with the museum. I am preparing a video right now for about my visit to the Isabella Gardner Museum, so I use that to prepare for the video. The next book I got at a book sale. This is Renoir, an intimate portrait. This is by Barbara Ehrlich White. Now, she wrote another book about Renoir, his life and art, many years ago. That's kind of more the standard one. This is more the intimate biography, and it really deals with his personal life, based a lot on his letters with his first woman that he had a relationship with. They split and she left, but there was a child in the relationship, and Renoir always supported that child that he had with her as he grew, and it was a big secret in his life. So that was kind of the big revelation in it. It was a good another kind of standard biography, the way they do them these days. Very good. You learn a lot about Renoir. And then I read another artist biography, this one called Monet by Jackie Wullschläger. She's the art writer for the Financial Times newspaper. And this is come out this year. You probably see it in a lot of bookstores. It's probably going to be bought by a lot of libraries. So this was a very good, excellent book about Monet, the standard biography of a chronological journey through his life. But it was pretty deep into his life, covering his relationships. I was struck by his work ethic. He just worked. Monet was an incredibly hard worker, and I learned so many things about him. I really enjoyed it. As a criticism of the book, I will say that Monet worked so hard, and for so many years he was unrecognized, and for to do what he did, to go out, every day to all these remote areas and travel around France and go out every day with a big load of paints and canvases and then come back and not get any recognition, to not sell paintings, to not impress anybody, in fact, to get insulted for what he's doing. Um, my only thing, I wish that she kind of described what it was that drove him so hard to do what he was doing, because he obviously had to have some inner spirit that was driving him. I felt that was left out. And I think that most people who have an inner drive to do something without any recognition and no financial support, that they talk about it. They say what they're doing, and why they do it and what drives them. But it was kind of left out. Maybe he never expressed that, but I would have thought he did. She never explained what he was trying to do with his paintings. Like, was it about the light? Was it about the colors? Was it about um, the compositions? Was it about the location? How did he choose one motif and not go to another motif? Like, she kind of didn't discuss that. I think it would have been insightful if she had done that. His colors later on were so outrageous. When you look at the saturation of the colors in the haystack paintings and the cathedral paintings, it's just like it was never really explained how he just ripped that stuff off and what he was doing. It was really a revolutionary aspect of his career. But there are so many other things that she did include, especially his relationships and, where he was and where he painted and all the places he went. And it's very strictly to the chronology of his life. So it's a very good authoritative book. The next book I read was Radiant, The Life and Line of Keith Haring. This is written by Brad Gooch. And this was a very good book. Of course, Haring is pretty much a contemporary artist. I'm sure there was much more um, material available about an artist from from the last couple of decades. A much more intimate portrait than like a Monet or Renoir, where Haring, a lot of the people who knew him are still alive today. And so it really did get an idea of his personality. It did cover his, childhood, his relationship with his parents was very well done. And then his roaming around and traveling around the United States, and then his art school, and then his move to New York, and he just exploded. It's really fascinating the way that his career just went from New York to global. It's just amazing. His homosexual life, and then he acquired AIDS, and then his life ended, but his art is still very popular today. I like this book. It was very well done. I'm glad I read it. I was born about a year after Keith Haring, so I did follow his career. Kind of, I must admit that I thought his art was kind of simple, and I actually tried to do a copy of it. It was a little more hard than I thought. Here's what I came up with. But I did by drawing that, I did form a more of appreciation for his art. His art is deceptively simple, and it seems like it's easy to copy him, but I found it's harder than I thought. I also did the video this year about Monet, and I traveled to Inyo County, California, to visit the Alabama Hills and a small town called Kearsarge. And so I read a book about the history of Inyo County that was interesting. Then I read Boethius, a philosopher, Consolation of Philosophy. Now I just jumped right in. This was a Penguin book, and it came with an introduction, but I just jumped right in and read the text, and it was okay. I did get the general idea of the book, but I do feel like I need to read it again and read the introduction to put it in its place and time in order to gain more from this book. But I am glad I read this book, The Consolation of Philosophy by Boethius. I reread a book that I read when I was in my 20s, one of my favorite books. This is This Side of Paradise by F. Scott Fitzgerald. And I reread it, and I still like it. It's a very innovative book. I liked his writing. It's for a man in his 20s to write a book like this is just outstanding. There were several very charming points. One thing that I realized that I value highly in writers is charm. You can read your Dostoevsky and you can read your other Russians. If a writer's charming, that's a really key to my heart when I look at fiction. And F. Scott Fitzgerald is very charming in this book, and that's why I like this book. I posted a video this year called The Third Man, and it was a evaluation of that. And somebody in the comments mentioned a book, The Search of the Third Man by Charles Drazin. Drazin is a film critic from Britain, and this is an excellent book about the film that I continue to be interested in, and it covers the origins of the film, the productions of the film, and all the many details about how it was made and conversations. Very really insightful interviews from as many from participants in the film, especially Guy Hamilton and all other people in the film. So if you like The Third Man, you must read this book, In Search of the Third Man. And I have done some portraits of some of my favorite characters from The Third Man, so I'm going to roll through those after I end the video. Thanks for watching.